Welcome into the show. My name is Arky Shea. This is Basketball by Association, and that man over there, looking as devilishly handsome as always, it is Joel C. Cortez. Joel, gobble gobble, mofo.
I'd say same to you, but I don't know what any of that means. Nonetheless, this is episode number 85. There's only one player, Arky Shea, in the history of the NBA who has worn the number 85. And he happens to be a former New York Knick. He wore it for one season with the Knicks in the year 2012. He wore it with the Cleveland Cavaliers the year before, which by my math is the year 2011. Do you happen to remember which New York Knick this may have been? It was less than 10 years ago.
Okay. All right, hold on. No, I don't.
He ended his career wearing 85 with the New York Knicks. This was his final season. He was 32 years old. He appeared in 29 games of that final season of 2011-12. He started 14 games, and I believe it was a rather significant injury that did him in. But this is a former two-time All-Star.
Okay, so it's a name I should know.
It is.
Give me, can I get one more hint?
One more hint is that
Nick.
Yeah, ended as a Knick. He came in as a member of the Charlotte Hornets and then played a couple seasons in New Orleans as well. The biggest clue should be former All-Star.
He's been out for a decade almost.
Final clue.
Yeah, one more.
You got to get this now. We believe.
Oh, is that Baron Davis?
It's Baron Davis, buddy.
Yeah. Yay, Baron Davis. We finally get to the Baron Davis episode.
This is a guy who averaged 20 points or better or awfully close to it almost throughout his entire career. Oddly enough, his first season in 99-2000, he averaged 5.9 points, and he went out averaging 6.1. So there's a very healthy bell curve where right in the middle, this is a guy who did make the All-Star team twice, was well known as a scorer, never had double-digit assists, but flirted with around 9 multiple times. Very good player and on a couple of very memorable teams nonetheless. Had the reputation as a little bit of a gunner and a ball hog at various points, but I think rehabilitated that by the time he was done.
Yes, he did have that reputation. Do you remember? I can't even remember what his injury was.
I believe, and do not quote me on this, I know it was significant enough that at his age it was considered career-ending. I believe it was an Achilles.
Okay. All right, I'm going to look it up real quick. Just because it's the Baron Davis episode, we have to do...
we should. I mean, one of us should do some prep before the show, and obviously it's not me, so...
partial tear of the patellar tendon.
Okay.
And a complete tear of his right ACL and his MCL in 2012.
I knew it was significant. That was all that I remembered. Obviously, I was right because it involved some part of his body. So
yeah, it did involve some part of his body. That is correct. And I just saw like a screen grab of the video that it happened against the Heat. And yes, I do now remember that injury. Yeah, it was gruesome. That's gross. Don't look it up unless you're into weird things. Joel, this week is technically for football because, you know, it's Thanksgiving. Basketball gets Christmas, which I'm much more excited about anyway. Football and Thanksgiving, it's all right. But hey, what's more family friendly than another Malice at the Palace almost happening, huh?
They tried. They really did.
They tried. Okay, so if you haven't seen the video by now, LeBron James punches Isaiah Stewart in the face, gets some blood going for the Pistons, and Stewart loses his mind. Did you, by the way, see in the post-game press conference that he was asked, hey, so did the refs tell you what you were given a tech for? And he was like, I got a tech? What did I get a tech?
No, that was Westbrook. That was Russ who had that quote. Stewart and LeBron never showed up to their press conferences, if I recall.
Oh, you're
I was told that neither of those guys talked to the media, and it was Russ who Russ was there playing peacemaker, but also escalating because he was just yapping the entire time.
You're right.
And kept stepping up to Stewart, and no one was restraining Westbrook. Obviously, everyone was restraining Stewart. So in Russ's defense,
right.
he stepped without actually, chest bumping or doing any of that stuff. He held himself back in that way, but he was definitely there inciting verbally. And yes, that is why he got a technical, because walk away, Russ.
He also had like I saw someone tweet dude stepping up like and stepping up like he's a Notre Dame Fighting Irish mascot. Did you see the screen grab of the like he literally like put up his dukes like he was the Fighting Irish mascot? It was pretty funny. Okay,
they're about the same size.
So the question, as of recording, LeBron, there is no news as far as a suspension or anything at this point. I think the Lakers have the Knicks next, if I'm not mistaken, at Madison Square Garden. LeBron had just come back this weekend, so right. Sweet for him. Let me ask you just this question: do you think this incident is worthy of whatever type of suspension? And two, do you think he will get it? Because the NBA can come back and say, hey, look, we ejected him. It was a flagrant 2. We did what we were supposed to do.
I think because it was a hit to the face and LeBron can pass it off and his teammates can pass it off as unintentional all they want. And none of us are in LeBron's head, so we don't know. But it didn't look very good.
True.
LeBron is not a dirty player as far as dishing stuff out. He's never had that reputation. He can be dirty sometimes in selling stuff and baiting stuff. You can call that whiny if you don't want to call it dirty. I would say in this instance, especially with the NBA putting such an emphasis on don't touch the face, right? Do anything but touch the face.
Right.
In this regard, you have to treat LeBron as anybody else. LeBron should get a 1-game suspension. Isaiah Stewart should be suspended for 3 games because that's the number of times that he tried to charge back after he was restrained.
Dude was livid.
He was, and he had the opportunity to leave the floor. It's at some point it almost got comical. It almost got into like one of those comedic movies where he kept acting like he was fine. All right, I'm good. And then just rushes back in, and there has to be some consequences for that. I don't care that Stewart is the one who got bloodied. He had a right to be angry. Certainly he had a right to get himself ejected. He did that, but to continuously charge back, I would suspend him for 3 games. That's the number of times he did not accept the verdict. And that is what it is. That could have become a dangerous situation had they not been able to restrain him, had he been able to get away with it, had he come running back in and Russ or Anthony Davis or somebody cold cocks him. You could have legit had malice at the palace too. It's obviously not the palace anymore, but
right.
You could have christened this new building in a way that you didn't want to. So you do have to put the kibosh on both of those things. Charging back, and it's a hit to the face. Suspend them both. But Stewart, honestly, is the one who deserves the longer out for this.
Man, it's going to be a tough look if, like, Stewart, the dude who literally is like the bloody face of this, is going to end up getting more games than LeBron. And maybe rightfully so, although I'd say suspend them both 2 games. I think just make it even, make it multiple games. I don't think that there's any way you should be able to just let LeBron off for a game.
I doubt they will.
For punching the dude in the face.
Yeah, I doubt they will because
maybe not. I mean, LeBron
didn't continue to escalate.
No, you know what my favorite part was, speaking of escalation, is that when he finally gets down the tunnel, like he starts sprinting down the tunnel, and the refs go over to the other side, go to the Lakers side, and they say, hey, that connects. So if you guys want to watch that tunnel.
They actually posted Pistons teammate Corey Joseph. And it sounded like Joseph did this of his own accord, and the coaches and refs were like, yep, good idea. Yeah. He posted himself at the end of that tunnel just in case this was yet another bait and switch by Stewart. I am sure that a whiteboard or garbage cans or other accoutrement within the Pistons locker room met a poor fate once Stewart got in there.
Yeah, could you imagine, by the way, if like that doesn't happen and Stewart's coming back, like you just see somebody flying over like the bench for the Lakers because there's a brawl happening because Stewart got through, found the connector between the 2 tunnels.
It was hockey / pro wrestling-esque, and that is obviously not the look that the NBA goes for.
But this is what all the people the reason they don't watch the NBA, this is what they wanted back, right?
The people who don't watch the NBA and cite that as a reason, if you give them this, they will find a different reason for why they don't watch the NBA. They're not going to, and they've got their reasons that make sense in their head at that time. But I've learned from lots of those conversations, they just find a different reason.
Well, you're right, because I posted that on Twitter, and it's like, so were you guys watching? And someone said, no, it's Sunday in America. I'm watching football. It's like, okay, so you've talked to me before about how,
right,
you want this fighting back, and here you go. You got in their brawl, and
the game will be too soft, or they'll be kneeling, or somebody speaks out too much, or they don't like the COVID pot. They'll just be a reason, and that's your choice in a free country. Watch what sport you like and what makes you happy.
Yeah, this is fine, but what about the social protests? It's like, right in that game. Did you watch them in that?
Yeah.
Hey, I do. Okay, so we're going to be a little lower on time today, so I do want to get a handful of headlines out there that I definitely want to get into. Yeah. And one of those is literally Luke Walton just getting fired over the weekend and for the weekend games. 6-11 start for Sacramento. I want to ask you: is that justified this early in the season? Do you think that team should have expected more of its coach and of its team at this point?
Walton was on a hot seat. You could have even called him a dead man walking coming into this year. The rumors were swirling by the end of last season.
True.
He's up against the fact that Kings are going to king, right? They've been mediocre to bad for the entirety of the post Chris Webber, Vlade Divac, Rick Adelman era. And they were in the exact same boat all the way prior, to that era as well. So this has just been who they are as a franchise. It's been a revolving door of coaches. The roster has enough talent that they don't embarrass themselves this year, but not enough to win consistently games. And you're still not sure exactly what the process is, but there are a lot of young guys on that team. And there's supposed to be progress when you have a young team. If that progress isn't happening, when you have the Marvin Bagley situation just continuing to fester and the team does not trade him, so obviously they still see value, but the coach does not play him, and they continue to kind of carp at each other, and that's just been a toxic thing. And this is not the first Kings young guy who has been stuck in a toxic situation where then Sacramento burns a high draft pick on a guy and ditches him just a couple years later, and with varying degrees of, is that guy's career wrecked or does he find salvation elsewhere? That's just been a common theme here too. So yes, it's justified. They're bottom 10 in defense. They're middling on offense. There's enough talent that they should be 500 theoretically. And he's had a couple of years to try this. There's been no discernible progress. But what's Alvin Gentry or the next guy or the next guy or the next guy going to do? The only difference now is that the Kings have a ton of money. They are spending like they're a first-class organization that comes with new ownership. Vivek Ranadive has poured money into this team. New arena, state-of-the-art everything. So the expectations are higher, and I respect that. The Kings want to become more than just an also-ran doormat franchise. They're trying to spend their way into that. They gave Walton a shot, who was definitely an up-and-comer after his stint as an assistant with the Warriors. Remember when Steve Kerr was out for half a season with his back issues, and Walton did a yeoman's job. But there again, that was an all-time talented team that he did a yeoman's job with. And Gentry is no slouch as a coach. I don't know that he's the long-term solution there, but we just don't know what the long-term plan is. And at some point, I think the money will catch up, but I don't know. I mean, how many more decades can we wait for the Kings to be relevant?
Yeah, I got to say this. I agree with you. And I was going to bring it up that I think because of the spending the new ownership has done, if you aren't a destination because of wherever you are, whether it's your location or the viability of your franchise in the recent history, if there's not a reason to come to you, you have to entice people. And the way you do it is maybe overspend a little bit for players. The new arena obviously is going to be a big help. You're trying
to make sure they're comfortable when they're on your team.
Sure, make them, because people talk, right? Players talk, and that what you try to want to say is listen, if guys leave here, go somewhere else, retire, blah, 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 that say, hey, listen, Sacramento's a decent place as opposed to sort of being just an outpost in the NBA. So, that's what you sort of have to do if you want to become relevant when you haven't been relevant and you're not like a destination franchise like Sacramento really isn't. So there is credit to be given there. And I do like the firing of Luke Walton. If you're not going, like, you need to show your team like you believe in them and you know that there's better for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're doing all this, it makes complete sense with what new ownership has been able to do and what they've sort of shown, which is, hey, listen, we'll give you a little bit of rope here, but we expect things here. So
and when you're losing veteran guys like Tristan Thompson, who may be fiery on the court at times, but is not known for being fiery off of it per se, and when you're losing him, there's some smoke there too. He's not the first guy who obviously has had some doubts about Walton and say we need to be better. So obviously Bagley's not on his Christmas card list either. But
he is not. News that was just brought up yesterday, Mr. Joel C. Cordes, Klay Thompson has been cleared to come back and start getting ready to get his body in the practicing shape and maybe soon the playing shape. And Joel, we've sort of pointed to this Christmas time as far as being the spot when we can see Klay Thompson back. My question is to you: how Golden State's 15-2 now? How much better are they with Klay Thompson?
I don't think we see him back on Christmas Day. I know that was a fun pipe dream that we've had, and there still is enough time for that to happen. But you're right; there's no reason to rush him back. The last thing you want is for a major setback, and you want to let this group continue to roll the way they are. When somebody else goes down and is a little dinged up, or that guys are running out of gas, you start to hit the doldrums in January. I think that's the time where you reintegrate Klay Thompson, because A, it either gives you a shot in the arm, or B, if you're struggling just a little bit anyway, you reintegrate him and try to find that next chapter of mojo for the rest of the season. And look, he's going to come back after having not played for 2 years, and it's going to be baby steps. He's going to play 12 minutes a game for a little while, and then 20, and he's going to be rusty. I'm sure he'll still knock down a couple shots here and there, but defensively, he is not going to be the same Klay Thompson probably at all this year. So there's going to be an adjustment period with his teammates, with him. That can get ugly. A lot of times when you're reintegrating a key piece like that, you lose some games because it messes with your chemistry. So Golden State may just want to look for that soft spot in the schedule where they've got, the Detroits and the Houstons of the world a couple of times in there, and try to get him back for some rehab starts there. Obviously, he probably will go down to the G League and do a little bit there. Prayers up for Klay Thompson that his body holds up throughout this and that we see him healthy, because it's been too long, man. Regardless of how you feel about the Warriors, regardless of how you feel about Klay Thompson, this is one of those players who is worth the price of admission every single night, and it's just been too long.
It really has been. Like, this is why I think so many people were hesitant to sort of love on the Warriors coming back, and I think are kind of surprised to see them how good they are. Draymond Green talked about how, like, he's falling back in love with the game all of a sudden. Like, hey, I guess winning helps, right? Like,
right, yeah.
Winning will do a lot of that for you. And I was looking at the schedule. If we want to look at the end of January, like, there's a stretch where they're at Houston, at San Antonio, at home against Sacramento, at the Thunder before going against the Jazz and the Knicks. Like, there's a little window. Like, if we're talking about the sort of doldrums before we get to the All-Star game kind of thing, like if you want a little bit of a boost, like there's like a soft cushion there to sort of get somebody into the game that can sort of, throw that energy back into your face and sort of reignite you for, 10, 12, 15 minutes at a time.
That would be the sweet spot for me, because even if you have a drop off, you conceivably, against lesser opponents, maybe we're going to rest some guys anyway.
Yeah.
And then you get him a couple games under his belt, these rehab starts, to steal a baseball term. And then you give him a week off of recovery for the All-Star break. And after that, then you can slowly pull the training wheels off. But that sounds like the perfect window for me. I know a lot of us would love to see him on Christmas Day and whatnot, or right around that time. But I would rather spend more time on G League stints than I would on NBA rehab stints because of the difference of the game. And I would rather him be able to give me something to knock down some shots, but to be able to move and be at least a break-even defender. They've got enough shooting. They don't need another decoy, but yet another body who's out there who you don't have to worry about and cover for the same way that you do for Steph Curry a little bit. That's where it's going to be really valuable for this team that is just, white hot right now.
Check out this stretch for them going into the All-Star game. So after that sort of softer stretch, we mentioned it might be a sweet spot for Klay to return for some rehabilitation time into the NBA. They go to Utah. They host the Knicks. They host the Lakers. They go to the Clippers, and then they host the Nuggets before going into the All-Star break. So there is a little bit of a heavier load to carry right before they get into the All-Star game.
I'd play him in those lesser opponents and then play him every other for the stronger ones and just continue to see how he does.
Yeah, I don't hate that. A team that has surprised us a little bit early on in the season was the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're now 9-8, but Colin Sexton goes down. He's out for the season with the meniscus surgery. Now he's going to have to deal with. Joel, this obviously is a huge killer shot for them and for them to be able to sort of compete long term with Cleveland, because I've been somebody who's been high on him and think he's a really fun player to watch. But that's sort of that's the beginning of torpedoing their shot of being able to maintain the season, right?
I would assume so. I think some of that they were going to come back down to earth either way, but that still may have meant a play-in tournament shot, which would be a victory for a team that a lot of us, including myself, thought was going to be a doormat. At the same time, Colin Sexton was their second leading scorer at just 16 points per game. His player efficiency rating was below average. A lot of the other counting stats are really ho-hum for a guy who handles the ball as much as he did. So it's not helpful to be missing Colin Sexton, but I don't know that it necessarily torpedoes everything. It just... how many other guys do they have that generate offense? That is the one thing that Colin Sexton does well, is he is able to push the tempo for himself. He's able to drive. The shot kind of comes and goes, but he's a little bit of one of those wild card scorers. And now the Cavaliers become a lot more system oriented, where you don't have the unpredictable guy. And it's a good chance for Darius Garland to continue to grow. He is the leading scorer at 18. We're going to find out whether this Ricky Rubio hot start to the season is sustainable. I personally do not think it is. And I love Ricky Rubio. I've been a Rubio fan forever. I love to see the guy do well, but it's not, but Evan Mobley, this is your shot, buddy.
It is.
This is your shot to really put your imprint on this season and to become the 1-2 with Garland and to make Sexton the literal wild card going forward. This is a chance for Isaac Okoro. Can he score double figures at the NBA level? It's early in his career, but if he can't, and so far he can't, that raises some questions about a guy who's a one-dimensional, very good defender, but really struggles on that offensive end. So yeah, the Cavaliers had a nice hot start. We see this from young teams from time to time. It was not going to be sustainable. They track talent-wise as a slightly below 500 team before this injury. It's going to be tough for them to reach that point right now, but the fact that they're not getting killed every night and the fact that they don't seem as highly dysfunctional as they did in the past, those are baby steps. Those are growing steps. And you got a lot of other young guys now who get to step up, and you never know. Somebody comes out of the woodwork and really plays well, and you go, oh, this guy that we didn't think too much of, now he's got a roster spot long-term, or at least next year going forward, and you bring Sexton back. I'm not in love with the Sexton and Garland backcourt. I see why they did it. I understand. I don't think it's too early, or I don't think you should pull the plug quite this early, but I have my concerns about that. Obviously, it would have been nice to be able to answer that question this year, and now you can't.
The hottest team in the NBA is your Phoenix Suns. That's right. They've won 12 in a row. The second hottest team has won 4 in a row. So that's pretty solid. By the way, do you know who that team is?
4 in a row. 4 in a row. It's still Golden State. I would have to imagine if they're 15-2.
It's the best team in the NBA. At least I thought it was going to be. That is the Atlanta Hawks. Yeah, they have won 4 in a row. Golden State's won 4 in a row too, but we already talked.
Please do Atlanta so that we're not all so wrong about you the way that we so far have been.
4 in a row's got you to 8-9. Here we go. All right, keep on fighting. That is, I think, still out of the playoff race.
Right, you're looking up at the Cavaliers.
We should change that soon, so we're not painfully awful on that pick. But the Phoenix Suns blistering hot right now. Joe Cordes.
They are, and this is where the chemistry of a solid core group, a young core that had a lot of upside left to continue searching, and the fact that Chris Paul, despite the age, continues to have enough left in the tank. He's hovering right around 30 minutes per game, which is good for him. I would certainly not tax him any more than that because I know he's been durable, but you start to get to that age. Still some concerns about their depth. But at the same time, you watch them play, and it started out a little bit rough in those first couple games. They definitely looked like there was some, NBA Finals hangover going on there. That's not uncommon. But now all of a sudden, the ball continues to pop. DeAndre Ayton is back for the most part, and JaVale McGee did a really nice job filling in for him. Before that, just again, as a rim runner, a garbage bucket guy, JaVale McGee has been able to do that very respectably for quite a while now. So I don't really have a lot to say besides we knew that they would probably be good. I thought that the Lakers would be better than the Suns. There's still time for that to happen, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen because the Lakers have such fundamental problems.
Boy,
and
they're
the Suns took advantage. Yeah, the Suns came out, did their job, took advantage of other people falling down in front of them last year, and just continued to grind and play good basketball. And it looks like they're on that track right now. And it may not be sexy as a narrative because we've seen it before, but it is incredibly respectable. And it also speaks to that legitimacy where, again, we doubted them, right? We doubted them last year throughout the playoffs. They were too young. They're not going to do it. They did it. They did it over and over. Coming back, we're like, yeah, was that just their year? And there was a lot of noise, and they're coming back and they're doing it again. Props up to them for that.
Absolutely. One team, and this may be the last one, but we'll see where we go on time. Tied for first place in the East is our Chicago Bulls. They're 12-5, tied with Brooklyn. Joel, they're not running away and hiding. They're looking mighty, mighty good night in and night out. And this is without someone like Nick Vucevic right now. Like, Vuce is not playing because of the COVID protocol. So my question to you is
Patrick Williams either, who was a starter,
up
until his injury, which is probably season ending.
How sustainable is this? And I don't necessarily mean just to be able to win the East, but to be able to host first round, because this team looks pretty well put together. I don't see a whole lot of flaws in the first 20 games of the season so far.
I worry about their depth, which I did coming into this year. I know some of the young guys, Ayo Dosunmu and Alize Johnson.
Are we going to run into that like in another 6 weeks or something, as opposed to right now?
That's what I'm afraid of, because now you've had to move Alex Caruso into the starting lineup. Caruso has been very effective for them defensively. Putting him and Lonzo Ball back together absolutely works as a backcourt. The starting lineup is solid. Even without Vucevic, you see the fact that you can plug Tony Bradley in there, and you've got fewer shots to go around for him. But Levine will take every shot that you'll give him. That's never been a problem, and DeMar DeRozan loves to have the basketball in his hands and is pretty darn good with it. So offensively and defensively, they've been on the same page. They're well coached. I do think that at this point, they're legit enough to be hosting a playoff series, but I don't think it's going to be as a top 2 or 3 seed. I think when it all shakes out, the depth of the Bucks, when they get things on track, where the Nets are already, you're going to have Philadelphia lurking if they get healthy. Maybe the Hawks get back into this. And of course, we always overlook Miami, who is right in this mix. There's just too many good teams, and I like their depth better. If this is a fully healthy Chicago Bulls team, that's a different story. But you're right. Come January, February, when other guys start to get dinged up, there's no way that all of Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso and DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, there's no way that all four of those guys, much less Vucevic, all just, play 82 games and keep this thing afloat and have enough gas to get into the playoffs. It's statistically highly improbable. So that's where the concern comes up for this team. But they've been good. They've been really, really good in the starting lineup. Credit to that front office. A lot of people had some questions, but it fits. And the bench is just barely good enough to come in there and not tank things.
Okay, let me ask you this as we get out of here, okay? The Bulls are tied up there for first spot. Half a game out in the third spot is the Washington Wizards. Answer me this, Joel. When we are done talking about this season, Bulls hosting, Wizards hosting, both or neither?
Bulls much more likely, but my strong money would be on neither. My strong money would be on Chicago in the 5th seed and Washington probably 7th or 8th, which is about the range that we thought they would top out. They've given themselves a nice cushion at this point, but it's a long season. And barring the unforeseen, Milwaukee gets right. Miami continues to do their thing. Brooklyn is there already. And then one of Philadelphia or Atlanta just has too much talent and gets into that 4th seed.
I was going to say, if you think about the teams that we expect to be there, how much good basketball have we seen them play so far? I thought about this. And I think our good friend Bo Estes brought this up on Twitter, and I think it's a pretty good point. These guys have played a lot of basketball in a short amount of time in these last year and a half. We're talking 2.5 seasons being trying to shove down in a 2-year window. It's been a lot. Maybe some of these teams that are more veteran laden, more experienced, are still playing and still giving the effort. But maybe sometimes we're just trying to save our guys, because we've seen Giannis go off in an important game against the Lakers. We know these teams can still be good, and the Milwaukee's 9-8 right now. We know they're better than 9-8. At some point, a couple of these teams are going to come online, right? And Philadelphia is probably going to be eventually without Ben Simmons, and they're going to be able to have Joel Embiid back, and everyone's going to be copacetic one way. And Miami, who's playing probably the best of all of those that we just mentioned, they're still 4 games or 5 games above 500. And Brooklyn, for as much as their woes we've given, they're tied for first, right? They're still tied for first. Even though they don't.
And we are less than 20 games into the season. We're almost to that 20-game point where you really start to get a good shake on teams, but we're not even there yet.
Yeah. So at some point, some of these teams will start to click. You just don't know whose expense it's going to be when it comes to nut cruncher time. So I don't know. I hope it's not the Hawks. Although I hope it's also not the Knicks, because the Knicks they are very there's some bummer games that have been happening recently, and I don't really.
It has, and I mean, I'm not going to say that I gave Tibbs and that team props at the beginning of the season. I'm not going to say there hasn't been a little bit of I told you so in my head with them coming back when you've got a team built on a defensive identity and your 2 main offseason additions are not defensive-oriented guys. You didn't necessarily need more defense. You needed offense. But that does mess with things a little bit. And the Knicks don't surprise anybody, right? People know who they are at this point. And if there's anything about a Thibodeau team, it's that it's predictable.
Yeah, so. So what does that mean? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say, Joel?
Speaking of a Nick who never played for Tom Thibodeau, this is the Baron Davis.
There's 3 games out of first. Come on, man.
They are.
There's still a lot to play. Where you're a Timberwolves, that are only 7.5 games out of first. Wow. The 10th.
Well, we haven't complimented them in a while, so they started winning again. It's only when we compliment them that they drop 6 in a row.
The 3 and I'm sorry about that. They won 3 in a row. But they're 7-9 all of a sudden back to a respectable range. So.
Dare to dream for both of us. But Baron Davis episode is in the books. Find us on YouTube. If you want the video version, give us a like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. And Spotify, iTunes, Spreaker, wherever you get your podcast. That is where you find the audio-only version. Arky, Shea, it's been fun.
It has been fun, and I swear to you, I will pay for every trip if the Knicks and Timberwolves can meet in the finals. I will pay for every. We will do live shows during the game.
I'm going to imagine travel will be impossible because society will have broken down in the apocalypse anyway if that happens. But
if that's what it takes to get the Knicks championship, that's what it's going to have to take. I'm sorry.
It won't be escape from New York. It'll be escape into New York for the NBA Finals.
I hate the fact that Derrick Rose gets a standing ovation. He's like, "Oh, this is kind of cool," and then they get punched in the balls at the end. I don't like that. It's not cool. Not cool. If you're going to standing ovate him, you need to let him win. That's the rules. That's the rules. Also, Derrick Rose shouldn't still be playing. He's 200. Okay. I don't know.
It feels like he is. He's not. He's like what? Still early 30s, but that man has had a odyssey of a career.
Joel, thank you for your time, friend. Thank you so much, and go Wolves.
We'll do it again, so I hear.